Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Gaming on the Block, the first one of 2023. I am so happy to be back with you guys. Obviously, you can see there is something very different on the cast, on the crew. Will is no longer with us. He is doing some other things, but I'm glad that we have Metamona to join us permanently moving forward. So what's going on? Yo, Metamona, how's it going?
Oh my! I miss Will. I do miss Will. I hope he is still on those digital streets. But I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be covering some hot topics in the metaverse and blockchain gaming with you guys. And Grogu's here with me tonight. He's bringing the force to our first show. So we're ready. We're ready.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, obviously you guys know back every time with these episodes with the massive giga Chad brain is Annie. Going to be giving his crazy insights. So this is going to be a very good transition into 2023. Annie, real quick, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's great. I have to say, the Gaming on the Block casts were always some of my favorite content to be working on, and nothing has changed. So new year, slightly new look to the crew, but again, Metamona's been with us before, and so it's good to have her back now as a permanent fixture. And TSG, it's always good to be here with you and talking about Web3 gaming. There's literally nothing more exciting to be discussing, and so pleased to be here. And I'll maybe mention for our audience, as you're looking, you probably have noticed we got a new background. So TSG, what is that all about?
Yeah, so man, I am very excited. We are very excited to mention that we are now sponsored by the ETH Lizards NFT project. So for anyone that's seen myself, yeah, massive. So for anyone that's seen myself, my PFP, Addie's PFP, we need to get Mona in somehow. But yeah, we do have these ETH Lizards, and they are now sponsoring the show. So the show is going to be on their YouTube channel, which if you're watching, you should have already realized this. We're going to be putting out clips, and we're really going to be scaling up distribution because of the ETH Lizards. So really appreciate that. But all right, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump straight into the topics. We have some big topics to cover. The first one is NFT, IP, and ownership. So Annie, I know you've recently made a video about this. Do you want to take the lead on this one? Talk to us about this.
Yeah, and I would say anyone that's been in the Web3 gaming space on Twitter and in Discords has probably seen a lot of discussion about this recently. And it's kind of an interesting topic because it kind of flared up in the middle of 2022 with a lot of NFT projects that were talking about ownership and Creative Commons licenses and IP rights and so on. And it never really got a lot of traction in gaming until December of last year. And I started seeing a lot of questions. People were going through various projects and looking at the terms and conditions and what rights do I actually have when I have an NFT in a Web3 game, right? That's the fundamental question that a lot of people are asking because, as we all know, many of these projects, they're kind of building their entire structure around we're better than Web 2 because we give you ownership of your assets. But that question of like, what does that actually mean is kind of a complicated one, right? We think of ownership of virtual items and objects. It's not so clear, right? You know, if you own a vehicle or you own a shirt, but what does that mean for a digital asset, a picture in a metaverse somewhere? So we want to talk about what does that mean? What do we see in the industry today? I've got an overview that I'll share in a few minutes here, but I want to kind of start with each of you as you talk to different community members and the projects that you're in, audience members for your casts. What is the perception of ownership in Web3 gaming? What are you guys seeing and hearing today?
So for this, and Annie, you kind of brought up something that had came up a while back. So I'm going to come from the NFT licensing angle, only because, as you mentioned, the topic of NFT licensing and IP use has been a very hot topic in our space. And we've seen different brands having different approaches to this when it comes to what you can or can't do with the characters that you own. I think it was about 6 months ago, Moonbirds, they announced there were going to be a CC0 project, meaning they're not going to be enforcing any copyrights on the birds. Now, if you think about the three categories of licensing, on the one extreme, we have CC0, which is the case of the Moonbirds, right? Where the project supports Creative Commons, which again means you can do whatever you want with your bird. And then nobody's going to say shit, right? On the other side of the spectrum is the traditional art piece, right? An example of that is VFriends, where you, as a holder of VFriends NFT, have rights over that particular NFT, but you don't own the IP. So essentially, you can't do whatever you want with that character. Now, in the middle, you have this whole range of options, right? I'm going to use Bored Apes as an example here. You buy a Bored Ape, you have the right to the IP for that ape. You have the commercial rights for it. So you can put that ape on a mug, on a sock. Yuga Labs may say you have commercial rights up to $100,000. If you make more than that, you got to let us know. I think Doodles was also doing that as well. And of course, there are risks and benefits to this, right? Risks being brand dilution by doing nefarious things. Bored Ape is taking a risk, and we got to remember that. The benefit is, of course, anyone in the world can bring value to your brand. So why do I say all of this? Because it's something we have to consider when we bring our NFTs as in-game assets into the game, or vice versa, when you take your in-game asset out of the game and into the physical world. In Web3, we're pushing these boundaries when it comes to IP and what it means to own something in these digital environments. But essentially, to build these worlds and in collaboration with players, it can go a number of ways for brands. But at the end of the day, I think it's up to the brand to decide what you can own.
You bring up really the clear question on a spectrum. If we go from basically no IP ownership whatsoever for your asset on one side to the other, which is basically full Creative Commons approach, we see that same kind of struggle playing out in the gaming sector as well. I think it's not as visible because very few people own assets that they would want to do anything with from an IP standpoint today. Now, that's me talking in January of 2023. Give it 12 months, and you're going to have players that will have won tournaments with a specific NFT. You're going to have people that have gotten high scores in games, or successfully achieved almost unthinkable accomplishments, and all of a sudden, unlike the traditional gamer, professional gamer, who their brand is just themselves, now you've got someone who, yes, they themselves are a brand, but they also have their assets that have the potential to be a brand for them as well, because that's what viewers and audience members are going to think about when they think about the game, that particular tournament, or that championship match. They're going to think about the NFT that person used, and all of a sudden you've got something that has potentially immense value to the community and could to the individual. And the question of who owns it, how do you own the asset, becomes really a deep one. And so, I don't maybe want to go so in depth into like IP rights and additional like marketing and reselling. But I think for me, that's a subset of kind of this broader topic of ownership in gaming. One of the interesting points that I've seen in all of the public discussions of the topic is, as is normally the case, people kind of get polarized into two camps, and they say either Web3 game is great, it's got ownership, and it's just better than Web 2. I don't really care about the details, but like it's on the blockchain, therefore it's better. And at the same time, you've got kind of the other camp that is like digging into all of the like legal, regulatory, case law that exists, which is fairly small at the moment. They're going through terms and conditions, and they're like, okay, I see in this particular project, they say you can't do this one thing, therefore you don't own it. So Web3 isn't true ownership. And I find that the truth is always kind of somewhere in the middle between these two extremes, right? And so, when we think about ownership, I approach this from kind of an economics point of view as opposed to a legal framework. And what I wanted to do, and I'm curious to get your guys' takes on some of this as well. I won't probably go through all of the details, but as I set up the framework for my recent video, each one of the rows on this chart that you see is a different aspect of ownership. So when we think about actually owning something, you've got different elements. There's the element that like you have something physically or maybe virtually. There's the element that you can use the thing, right? So being able to borrow and use something anytime you want is a semblance of ownership. Leasing, I think, is pretty self-explanatory when you have the right to let someone else basically rent the object from you. Excludability or exclusion is kind of an interesting one. This means basically if I have the thing and no one else has it, that's an element of ownership as well. Transferability, obviously being able to send the thing to someone else if I so choose, or sell it to someone else. And then collateralizing something is an element of ownership too, right? If I can offer that thing as collateral to another person, and then they're going to give me something else of value in return, these are all different elements of ownership that we can think about in both the physical and the virtual world. And so what I set up was basically, how do Web 2 gaming assets work today on the left-hand side versus how do Web 3 assets work, again, in general. And this is not unique to every project, but at a high level, what I found is that about half of the topics Web 3 had pretty substantial improvements in, but there are still some, right, excludability and possession, where if you have virtual objects that are on a particular server that's housed by a gaming studio, they still have possession of those objects to a large extent, right? And so it's not 100% ownership in that regard. And so I think interesting to me was that I think both camps are right to some degree, but a lot of times people that say you don't have ownership, they're looking at like one specific aspect of possession or excludability and saying, therefore, Web3 ownership is not real. And I think it's more of kind of a spectrum approach where you have different elements that are truly better ownership, but it's not perfect, right? And it's going to take years and potentially even decades to see how this applies legally and from a regulatory standpoint, and in practice what this actually means. So I think that this is the kind of general framework that I like to consider around ownership, and each project is going to be a little bit unique. TSG, maybe I'll throw it over to you. I know, you on the Illuvium side, you're working with the team, and this has been kind of a hot topic as of late as well. So what's your take on true ownership of Web3 gaming assets?
I think both of you guys have brought up some really, really good points. I think, Mona, your discussion about like owning the IP itself, right? I think that's a fascinating one. And I think that's a lot more applicable to profile pictures and things like that than gaming assets, in my opinion. And I think even honestly, the way the examples you gave, I think were really good examples of, for example, Moonbirds compared to something like VFriends. So like anyone that knows Gary V is building out his own IP, whereas Moonbirds, again, I'm not sure what their plans are with all of this, but like I can't imagine them thinking like, all right, we're going to build out this amazing IP and we're going to have a TV show with Moonbirds. We're going to be, I don't think that they've got the plans themselves to actually build out this IP to make it like this multi-billion-dollar kind of franchise covering all aspects of media. So something like that, it's very easy to give up those IP rights and say, oh, if you own it, if you own the digital asset, you own the IP rights to that for you to do whatever. Like it doesn't make it's not an issue to dilute the brand, because that's kind of the marketing for the brand themselves, that they're relying on the owners of these NFTs or these digital assets to market for them. Whereas something like Gary V, I'm actually a holder of a couple of VFriends, and it's one of those things where if I was to start making TV shows, that's going directly against what Gary is doing, because he is the one that's trying to make all of these toys, trying to make all of these TV shows, and what my ethos, what my values are, they could conflict with what he's trying to do. So giving up IP rights on something like that is a little bit different. And I think that idea is actually translatable in gaming. So if you have games that aren't trying to build these massive IPs and are just trying to be quick things, ownership for them might include IP rights. Whereas I think for something with Illuvium, anyone that knows, man, we have 3 games. We're going to be building out movies, TV shows, storybooks, like all of these things. Like you would be insane to think that we're just say, oh yeah, we're giving up IP rights as well. Like that would just be detrimental to the brand, to everything, especially if we start doing massive partnership deals. Again, if you're doing if a studio is doing a massive partnership deal with Nike.
Sorry to interrupt, but would that
No.
still be the case if I own my character as an in-game asset?
Depending on the actual studio and the IP that they're trying to build. Personally, and I get it. I get what Annie is saying again about the two sides of like, dude, do you really own it? Or yo, we can sell it. We own it. Like a very base level thing. Honestly, I see the technical discussion of, do you really own it? Do you really own the IP? I get that. But I think for gaming, it's not that deep. I think like it's just not, as long as we have like what I'll bring it back up now, but like all of these things that Annie again so eloquently brought up with his presentation, the fact that we can actually own it, like the fact that I'll take that word away, sorry, not own it, the fact that we can actually hold it, that gives it major points in the ownership department. The fact that we can actually use it, that's a lot of like in the game, we're actually able to use it, especially in something like, for example, I'll always go back to Illuvium, but you have an asset that can be used in multiple games. Like that is some form of ownership. The fact that you can lease it, again, these are benefits already. Exclusion, transferability, like all of these things are things that you can get in these gaming assets. Is IP rights really a thing that we're gonna die on? Like, is that the hill that we're gonna die on and be like, yo, we want this 100%? Maybe for some games, maybe for not. But I think most general gamers don't care. Like, as long as they can get those benefits that Annie has put, I think that already is like 100x benefit from what we're experiencing today as a gamer already. So that's my take on it.
Sorry, I think the only reason I came from that angle and I wanted to bring that angle into the metaverse, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the new sentiment, the new thing is you can bring your PFP into our metaverse, right? And Sandbox is advertising that, and these interoperability of taking those assets from one platform to another platform. That's kind of where my mind was going. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the assets are the NFT. So if my PFP is going from one metaverse to another metaverse, you see where I'm going with that?
I think that's going to be a long time away. Like in regards to development, and unless we get to this actual Ready Player One, where there's one company that owns the entire metaverse, and it's like they have the developers, or everyone is playing on their blockchain or their kind of infrastructure. I don't think that's something that we need to worry about anytime soon. Because, for example, like Moonbirds collaborating with Illuvium, collaborating with VFriends, collaborating with ETH Lizards, like all of these things, it's going to be different, like fidelity, different, like it's just, there's a lot of different moving parts that it's going to be very hard for them to actually, like the idea of full interoperability is time away. And I don't think it's something that, I mean, it's good to think about today, but I think there are issues closer to us that we need to solve rather than these massive picture kind of abstract things currently. Again, like I mentioned with the whole like ownership of assets without the IP ownership in gaming, that's something that's doable, reachable. It's very close to us, and it's a massive improvement to what we already have. I think it makes more sense to kind of focus on that. Once that issue is dealt with, let's move on to the next one. And maybe I'm not like super visionary in that way, that I'm not thinking 10 years down and imagining crazy things in the future. But I think taking these first steps is the better thing to do.
Are you kidding me? You are in the future.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
One major difference that I would point out, I think, between like PFP collections and NFTs versus gaming is the element of uniqueness to the asset. And I think this matters probably a lot when we talk about IP rights specifically. So let's Mona, this is a perfect example, right? So you've got your Grogu there. If I have the same toy Grogu, and we both have a virtual Grogu NFT that we've got in our wallets, but like they're indistinguishable. They look the same. They have the same base stats, or even if like my
It's a
Grogu is
variation,
a little bit
whatever.
faster and yours is a little bit stronger. Like they're still basically the same. It's a lot harder for me to both technically and practically capitalize on IP rights for my Grogu. I think you can make an argument that potentially, like, people love collecting, and so people might say, "Oh, Annie's Grogu is the one that was the champion of the first ever tournament in
I was
the
just
Star
gonna
Wars
say,
metaverse."
mine
Yeah,
too. Mine is a fake
Mine
movie
too.
star.
Mine too.
Right?
exactly.
Hello,
So
have you not seen his
someone
movies?
exactly. So someone might be willing to pay a premium
Mm.
for
Right.
that particular one. But like the question, if I use mine in my Annie Knows branded Grogu shirts or whatever, like there's really no functional difference in mine
Yeah.
versus yours because the artwork is the same Grogu. Granted, they're different, tokens on a blockchain, but practically speaking, there's nothing unique about them other than like the achievements of one versus
Poor
the other.
baby. You're
But
unique, baby. You're
if
unique.
if you have exactly the one of one Grogu, which you do at the moment, clearly, the, that
Clearly.
that gives you a much stronger incentive to say, okay, I want to monetize and build an IP or build a brand around the Metamona Grogu, and all of a sudden, we're in a very different space. And so I think,
Yeah.
to a large degree, that's one of the reasons why the topic came up so much earlier for Web3 NFTs as opposed to like gaming NFTs, because there aren't a lot of unique gaming NFTs that
Yeah.
people want to use that for. And
Mm.
TSG, coming back to
Yeah.
your point, most gamers just want to play. They're not thinking about building a brand,
a business or
around
like
their
Yeah.
assets.
Yeah.
and I think it's
Very
completely
true.
fine. Like you see again, I'll go back to Smash as well for anyone that knows, like, but again, we have like these best players, and like you mentioned before, they're associated with a specific character. Do they need that for IP rights? Do they need that for brand? No, like it's not that deep. Like as long as they're associated culturally with that character, with that item, whatever it is, it's like, oh cool, they can use that for branding. They don't need to specifically own the IP of that character to kind of brand and market around that. Like that's and again, like the example of, let's just say Pokemon today now goes to blockchain. What if, like, and there's millions of Pikachus out there. So what, every owner of Pikachu is meant to have IP rights? Like what does that do to the brand? Like that's just insane. Like it's
Yeah.
just an
Yeah.
insane concept. So I think that's a non kind of discussion with IP rights for big
Game
IP
NFTs, yeah.
games. Yeah, I don't think it's a thing. Again, Moonbirds and stuff, things like that, I can get it. But for Illuvium, for I don't know, Pokemon, for these massive IPs that are building these IPs, they're not going to give that shit away. You'd be insane to think
Right.
so.
That would be
Yeah,
like that would be like you're Disney, these are your characters that people get
exactly.
to interact with, but you don't get to take Mickey out of Disney and
It's
yeah, makes sense.
and it's the same thing kind of in the real world now. Again, if you buy a Spider-Man comic, does that mean you now own the IP for Spider-Man? No, you're collecting that, right? It's something that you're
Right.
trying to collect, and you still own it. Like it's the same kind of concept, just in digital format. But all right,
Right.
yo, guys, moving on. I actually wanted to hit the next topic, and this is something that we're all very, very excited for. Something that I won't be attending, but you guys will be, which is very, very exciting.
So
The
sad.
game is
Yes.
oh man, that would have been sick to have all three of us. But I mean, again, I think we did decide that you guys are going to carry out like a full life size cardboard cutout of me, right? I think that was
Larger than life.
100.
larger. Yeah,
I
perfect.
10-foot tall TSG.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
accurate. But all right, cool. So what we're talking about today right now is the Gamers Choice Award. Mona, I'll throw it to you because you just recently put out an interview with Icy, the guy who's been putting this all together.
Creative, yeah. I am so excited about about this event. I mean, as you said, Annie, I'm going to meet Annie in person. I'm really excited about that. We are very sad you can't be there. I am definitely ordering your cutout, and we're going to walk around. First and foremost, we have to highlight that this is going to be the first ever, take that all in-person Web3 gaming award show. Like, what?
Yeah.
And it's going to be right here in my backyard of Miami, Florida. hosted and created, as you said, by our very good friend Icy. And we're just so proud of Icy for his diligent work on making this event happen. We talked about it yesterday on my show. The video is there if you guys want to watch it. I mean, he really is bringing together the best of the best in Web3 gaming. And without a doubt, this is going to be Web3 gaming's biggest night. And we're going to be honoring the best gaming has to offer. I know I'm going to be hosting the pre-show, and I think Annie, you're presenting, Annie, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I'll be presenting for one of the categories is the plan right now.
Amazing.
Yeah, which I'm so excited. There a lot of our favorite influencers are going to be there. Some amazing games, amazing projects that are going to be recognized. And I think, we just came out of a very rough year, and I'm sure there were moments where people were wondering, some of these chains not. Whether it was collapsing or some of the funding not coming through. I'm sure some of these gaming projects were like, oh my God, are we going to make it? So I think it's just a moment to appreciate the work everybody has done during the toughest year that crypto has had. So it's very cool that IC recognized that and it's bringing everyone together for just a night of celebration, honestly. There's a lot of nominees, a lot of projects. We have nominees for best lore, best game lore, best action adventure, best strategy game, best mobile game, esports. Yeah, just to name a few. We can take a look at some of the nominees if you want. We can
absolutely
talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, these are the Game of the Year nominees.
Here are the nominees for the Game of the Year. Now, I'm going to let you guys take it away with this. Hey, bias, alluvium, no bias and alluvium comments.
I just want to put it out there. I'm super proud of the Alluvium team community. I was just talking to Icy last night actually, and I can't believe it. Alluvium is nominated in seven of the categories, which is nominated more than anyone else, and that feels crazy to think about. That all of the panel included Alluvium that many times for it to be nominated 7 times is pretty. I mean, we would say it's expected from the team. We're like, yeah, of course, we're building the most amazing game, but it is still pretty. It's nice to see. It's very, very. It's nice to see. Annie, what are your thoughts with the whole the whole game award? IC did put it so beautifully in his interview with you. Some of these games aren't completely out yet. They are in private beta, but it is better to be early, right? It is better to kind of get there, set this infrastructure up, show that we are a real thing, bring everyone together, kind of have this collaborative, this fun, and also highlight the work that has been done, celebrate the work, all the steps. Because I always used to say that 2021 was year 0 in GameFi with the explosion of Axie. 2022 was actually year 0.5. I think 2023 is going to be year 1, but I think last year was year 0.5, and I think that it's a really good thing to be highlighting that and showing, because from year 0 to 0.5, I feel like we took massive leap forwards, and it'd be silly of us to not celebrate that, especially in an industry so early. I think giving the flowers is important, celebrating each other, collaborating, shining a light on all the good work and all the hard work that people have been putting in.
Yeah, I have to say it's super exciting to be a part of this. I was honestly honored to get the chance to be one of the panelists for voting nomination purposes. It was also a little bit surreal because, as you guys know, obviously anyone that has major conflicts of interest is expected to recuse themselves, and so there were about 6 projects or creators that I had to recuse myself from voting for or nominating across the board. But frankly, that's kind of exciting because I know that I'm a part of a lot of the really good projects that are building out there in some form or fashion. So, in that said, for me, the fact that there are 17 different categories, and I went through and I counted, I think there's about 80 different projects that I nominated, or projects or creators or blockchains or platforms or whatever, depending on the category, across the board. And just to kind of step back and take that all in and say, look, the fact that there are 80 different individuals or projects that we want to want to nominate and recognize, very, very impressive. Having come through, as you said, a pretty challenging time in the industry. So overall, just the 10,000 foot view, very exciting to be able to recognize this. I think when you consider the difference between Web3 gaming and like DeFi, I don't think at industry conferences you had award shows for best DeFi protocol, right? Or
I mean, it'd be
maybe there were
it'd be pretty bland. It'd be pretty bland.
It would be so bland and
kind of an odd thing, right? But in gaming, we have that opportunity to do so. And what I would say is, when I look at the nominees, and you had the game of the year up there,
I'll bring it back.
really impressive to me is the diversity of genres that are represented, right? You've got RPGs, you've got auto battlers, you've got open world metaverse, you've got FPS games, and that's just in game of the year, right? And you can go on down the list through others too.
That's exactly what I told Icy. I said, I mean, look at this lineup here. First of all, this is fierce competition. This is very tough, but it really depends on what genre you're into, right? If are you into the mystical, the alluvium's mystical worlds, or are you into, the first shooter war? It just depends what you like, right? What are these lores that you like? What are the judges, do you think? Do you think they're looking for here?
That's a very good question, actually. Annie, what were you looking for, actually? That's a very good question, because me and you were both on the panel, and I do want to make it clear real quick as well. Like what Annie said, because I do work on the Alluvium team, I was unable to vote anything Alluvium at all. So again, that was another thing where I was like very, very proud to see Alluvium nominated in 70 of these categories without me voting. Crazy. So that means everyone else. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. What were you looking for when you were voting? What was kind of your framework moving into this?
Yeah, so let me say for the general categories, the best RPG, the best mobile game, the best sports game, etc. For those, I'm looking for two things. The first is, do I think that this game has the ability to break some new ground in the use of Web3 in that genre, right? Whatever the genre is. And there's different ways you can do that. A lot of these projects have some very unique takes on how to apply Web3 technology, principles, ethos into their projects. So the first for me was Web3 utilization. And the second one was, do I think, based on the gameplay that's available today, that this is a game that could capture the attention of gamers? So if this game had no Web3 elements at all, and it was just a game, right, that there wasn't an ownership discussion, would it be something that I would want to play? Again, I have preferred genres just like everyone else, but I know really across the board, because I've played basically all of these genres at different times in my life, what people are interested in, right? And what are some of those core elements that are going to make a game engaging, fun, have sustainability? And so those are the two pieces I was looking for personally, was Web3 integration elements and pure gameplay focus and experience, right? And so that's what I used for the categories. Obviously, it's a little bit different if you're getting into like best trailer, best lore, best blockchain. So some of those were kind of unique. But in general, I found there was only literally one category where I didn't feel like I would adequately be able to submit 5 nominees for the topic out of all 17 categories, which if you asked me 6 months ago, I'd have looked at you like you were crazy to get to half of that number. But frankly, you look at the development of the space, we've had so many good projects that are launching, that have alpha versions out, that have beta versions out, that are fully launched, that you really have a lot of good opportunities to highlight it. Having the chance to basically appeal to Web 2 gamers, regardless of what genre is important to them, is super important. And as we look at capturing the mind share of non-Web3 natives, it's going to start when we have some major games that actually begin to break through. And you're going to have 1, 2, 3 games that really, they hit 1 million daily active users, right? They bring on the 10 millionth player. They have a $15 million prize pool for a tournament or whatever. Like, there's going to be some of those milestones that you can step back and say, okay, we see progress. once you have those occurrences that are happening, the question is for all the other gamers that don't want to play in that genre, and they say, this Web3 gaming thing is interesting to me. What can I play? And they say, but I'm an FPS player. I don't see anything that's appealing to me. Or, I'm a simulation game player. I'm an RTS player. Like, if you don't have an offering for that person that appeals to them and is a genre that's interesting, they're going to be like, all right, cool. I'll wait another 4 years.
Yeah.
I'll just go back to whatever I've been doing. And so I think as an industry, we really want to see breadth of genres represented so that players have a reason to begin transitioning over to Web3.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. First and foremost, we always talk about this. The game has to be fun, right? Everybody has to love playing that game. But you hit it right in the nail. It's some areas in this is not going to interest some people. But it's when I looked at the categories, it's really awesome and interesting to see that they are taking into consideration the metaverse, for example, metaverse of the year. So if you don't care about the game, at least you care about these digital environments that are being created where you can play a game, but you can also shop. You can also chat with your friends, meet your friends, hang out, attend a concert, go to a fashion show. So that's all part of it too. And I think that's the Web3 element that Annie is talking about. And I'm so glad that those are going to be recognized at this event as well.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, like pretty much, Annie, it's funny that you say that. We didn't actually have a discussion when we were voting about this. But I went into it with a pretty similar framework. Like the main thing was, is it fun? And the second thing that I thought of in regards to my priority list was, does this actually have a chance to bring in players? Like, let's take away the Web3. Is the game good enough to actually, is the IP good enough? Like, does this actually have a chance against Web2 competitors?
Just want to recognize one more category. Do we have time?
Yeah. I was actually just gonna lead us into that. I was actually gonna say that the next topic that we wanted to talk about was predictions, and I would love to hear your predictions for Game of the Year. And then we've also got a Creator of the Year that we can kind of just have a fun little prediction about this. We didn't plan on doing this, but I thought
we did it. I like it though.
It's a nice little segue into the next predictions topic. So we'll start with you, Annie. I'll start with you, Annie.
Bring up the other slide.
The other one first?
Creator. Yeah, cool. This is the Creator of the Year category, which is super interesting. I'm so glad they're bringing attention into these people that, oh my gosh, they eat, breathe, sleep, talk, content, like gaming. These guys they're machines, all of them. Yeah. And they all each bring a unique perspective to the game. But yeah, Annie, let's hit these guys. Can we talk a little bit about each individual and what you think and what they bring to the table?
Yeah, so I definitely think they all have kind of their unique approach to their creation, their style. In some cases, even their mediums, I would say, right? Like Jonah is primarily Twitter based versus YouTube versus Twitch and some of the others. So like that's interesting to me, just kind of all on its own. That each of them kind of has their own audience and their own brands and how they're approaching the content. What I would say is all of them, I think, to a large extent, are focused on kind of the gameplay elements that that you see in these titles, and to various extents, they're out there actually trying out new games, introducing them to their audience, talking with other creators and builders in the space. So it's certainly very excited. It's a critical thing to be able to recognize creators who are able to help onboard and educate new gamers. So I probably won't dive into each one, but what I would say is I'm probably partial to Bryson. Personally, I don't know if we're supposed to say like who we're probably going to vote for. I'm going back and forth a little bit. So I have a lot of respect for most of these guys, and really Bryson is doing amazing work bringing Web3 content in a way that is easily accessible to Web2 gamers. That's the piece that for me sets him apart a little bit from the others, is that his audience is not only Web3, his audience is also Web2 gamers. That's one of the key missing pieces that we as an industry need. And so, that's something that I think I want to pay some tribute to and recognize. But again, this is a really great group to be able to showcase and highlight in the creator space.
100%.
TSG, what's your feedback on these?
A lot of it is the same thing, like what Annie said. Like they're all really experts in the field that they kind of cover specifically. Like Annie said, and I don't want to repeat it, but Jonah being on Twitter and Twitter Spaces, everyone else doing more gameplay content. Stash doing everything. He pretty much does tier lists. He does collaborations. I really like that about Stash. The podcast that he does around the metaverse. The tier, like the fact that he's constantly collaborating, it's a big part of my ethos as well. And I think that's the way to actually grow in this space. And obviously, respect to Spike, but Bryson, in my opinion, is the GOAT, like of Web3 content creation right now. And again, it's very clear who I voted for and who I predict is going to win this category. But the more I speak to Bryson, the more I realize he's just switched on, man. Like the guy understands business, he understands brand building. He puts in the work. The amount of work he puts in if you look at the YouTube videos, if you look at the Twitter threads, consistent activity, like he's just on it. The shorts, the TikToks, like he's innovative. Like he really understands how to flip things on its head and really get things going to the next level. So I think, a lot of respect for Bryson.
It's without saying that this is going to be a very tough selection between, the creators, the games, the projects, the stories, the blockchains, the metaverses. I feel for the judges because I don't know how they're going to do this. Everyone here deserves recognition. Guys, mark your calendars because you don't want to miss. This is going to be the first ever Web3 gaming event. And again, it's going to be on January 31st in Miami. And it will be streamed worldwide, if you guys didn't know. And you can still register and vote on their website, which is web3gamer.com.
Gamer with a 3. Gamer with a 3.
Thank you. Yes. Gamer with a 3. And I'm just excited to meet everybody there. And Annie, see you in a couple of weeks.
It's going to be awesome. Welcome to Miami.
Welcome to Miami.
Miami. Yes.
Guys, moving on to the predictions real quick before we actually move on to our predictions for 2023. Annie, your prediction for Game of the Year. Who do you think is going to take it? You can be biased, unbiased. It's completely fine.
So it's an interesting question. I'm not really sure how people are going to be viewing this. I think it's probably a toss-up between Big Time and Illuvium. And the question, again, not to denigrate any of these projects because I'm really impressed by all of them. I absolutely would include them all in my my top 10, top 15 projects across the industry. I think Big Time has been out longer and has had more consistent gameplay throughout 2022. So if we're looking at sort of the duration of the year, versus the amount of time that Illuvium has had the arena out, is kind of a factor that I think might be something people consider and reasonably so. So I think that's, from a prediction standpoint, that's probably where it will land. That said, though, God, EVIO and Undead Blocks, the FPS space, they've got some really cool things. The tournaments that Undead Blocks and Grant and the team have are frankly some of the best Web3 content and Web3 interactions in the industry. And I think just the general appeal of Blankos to a lot of more casual players that are looking for that, kind of that general open world vibe and that experience is very cool. So again, props to all of these games. I have nothing bad to say about any of them. They're really trying to build meaningful, engaging content for their audiences. And just kudos to all of them for being recognized at this final stage.
Yeah. And so your money's on Big Time or Illuvium?
Yeah, if I have to make a prediction, that's what I would guess would be the case.
I'm going to give credit to all of these guys. I think all of these guys have absolutely smashed it. I think Blankos being on the Epic Store, I think that was massive for Web3 in general. I think that can't kind of go unsaid. Undead's Blocks, like you mentioned, Annie, that the tournaments that Grant has set up has been incredible. EVIO, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not as clued up about that one as you are. But in regards to Big Time Illuvium, I agree. It's obviously going to be, I won't say obviously, I believe that it's going to be between those two. And I think like what you mentioned, Annie, big time has been around for longer. But I think it's going to be tough, right? It's going to be based on the perception of people. But I think Illuvium kind of hit people with more of a wow factor when that came out, just because graphically it was miles beyond anything else that we were looking at in the space. Do we is the wow factor kind of enough, because it was here for a shorter period of time? Is that enough to get people over the line to vote for Illuvium, or is that consistency and visibility of big time going to take it? That's going to be a tough one. Obviously, if it was up to me, I would choose Illuvium. I wouldn't be very good at my job if I didn't say that. So
Of
Illuvium
course.
is what I'm
Right.
I'm going for here. Let's move on to the actual predictions that we have prepared ourselves. I want to start with Annie, if that's okay, because Annie, you got some really specific predictions that that you think are going to be happening in 2023. Do you want to share that with us and let us tell you why you're wrong? All right, I'm just playing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I always like to tell people I like making predictions about the future, and occasionally I'm even right. So take this for what it's worth. I've got a handful of predictions for 2023, and we're each going to kind of run through our thoughts on them. I'm going to run through first kind of blockchain topics, and then I'll run through Web3 gaming. So my first prediction for 2023 is that Polygon and IMX will end the year as the undisputed two leaders in gaming blockchains, both in terms of projects and users. And then also Solana is going to drop out of the top 5 in both categories by the end of the year. Again, I'm these aren't really hot takes from my side, just kind of based on what I see as far as developer movement, project movement in the space, and where I see the chains headed at the moment. That's my prediction from a blockchain standpoint. Any quick feedback on that from either of you?
No, I mean, that one I agree with. Honestly, I do agree with.
Next up, in terms of gaming projects, I predict that at least one major Web2 game will launch a blockchain integrated game in 2023, meaning a major gaming studio. My guess is, if I had to choose one, I would say probably Ubisoft is the most likely. But what we've seen over the past few years is a lot of these Web2 studios have moved from sort of the incubating, investing, subsidizing partnership phase of growth. I predict that at least one of them will try and take the step out into integration. Now, it won't be, I don't mean like a fully developed on-chain block, game, but I mean they'll launch one of their titles with actual NFT token integration this year. So this is probably the one that I'm least confident about, but I would be surprised if we don't see one of the legacy studios, for whatever reason, decide to take that risk.
Yeah.
I think, like, depending on what you mean by this, I think this you might get a minor game from one of these major studios that I can see happening, but like a major IP, like seeing like a Call of Duty or seeing one of these major IPs integrate something like that, I don't think it's going to happen. Not this year.
2024. 2024.
Yeah, I think more likely.
I'm not sure that I see that with like a major title either. I'm just meaning that they will launch an actual product on the blockchain, which we haven't seen, right? We've seen them float some things and try some initial, like, I think we're going to see some actually like go into the space and not like just walk a little pilot out there and see how it goes. So
right, you mean dive straight
Fair
in.
enough. Fair enough.
Good. Next, I predict at least one Web3 game will have greater than 2 million daily active users by the end of 2023, which brings us pretty close from whatever game studio that would be to the bull run and the craziness of Axie and the other Wave 1 games in 2021.
I'm curious if that's actually going to happen.
In terms of tech, I think that a serious solution for user acquisition that uses wallet analytics and on-chain analytics for that user acquisition is going to emerge by the end of the year that will capture greater than a million users. And I think that's going to be a major turning point in the industry as well, is if you can save literally millions on user acquisition through using on-chain analytics, that changes a lot of calculations, both for legacy gaming studios and Web3 gaming studios.
100%.
I think by the end of this year, gaming is going to 10x its share of crypto to account for 3% of Web3. So right now, the gaming sector of Web3 is only 0.3% of the industry. And this is, again, we're the midpoint of January. Total market cap of crypto is 883 billion right now, give or take, probably a little bit higher today. But I think we're going to see gaming move back to that 2.5-3% mark. Yeah, last one is, I would say, gaming adjacent. So I predict that OpenSea is going to drop in their market share to below 40%, which would be a pretty precipitous change. But I think it's because you're going to see a lot of these secondary chains and like specific industry specific chains like gaming that begin pulling more market share from them and their marketplaces, whether it's their custom marketplaces. There's new entrants that are going to be appearing and so forth.
I personally am not as bullish for this year as clearly you guys, based on the predictions. But my first prediction actually is, I think that we're going to still see a lot of, I won't say downtrend, but a lot of like stagnation, just a lot of sideways action with the market, with interest, with engagement. And because of that, I think we're actually going to see a lot of the current Web3 content creators, potentially not the ones, I hope not the ones on that gaming creators of the year list, but I think we're going to see a lot of creators get discouraged that the money signs aren't here anymore, and they're just going to fall off. I think we've seen it happen before during a downtrend like this, and I think we're going to see a new kind of cycle of creators. And I believe that the ones that stick through this and really kind of build that community, even in this bear, and fine tune their skills, are in the gym shooting those free throws. I think they're the ones that are really, really going to explode in the next run. But my prediction is that we are going to see a lot of these Web3 creators disappear. My take on that. I think a majority of people are in it for short-term money. Like, it just is what it is. I get it. People have bills to pay. They have food to put on their table. And as soon as the money kind of dries up, like the passion, it's difficult to make content consistently, to grow a community consistently when there's not that much engagement. That shit is difficult, and not everyone's made for it. But yeah, so that's my first prediction. So that's the bearish prediction that I have. Another one is, I think we are going to see some major form of regulation being implemented in regards to crypto and DAOs this year. I think the FTX collapse really, really put regulators in a corner, being like, yo, you guys need to get your shit together. Something needs to happen. Whether it's positive, whether it's negative, I'm not too sure. But I think we're going to see some major form of regulation this year. I can't imagine after FTX that we have an entire 365 days without that happening. Like, that's fucking impossible. Annie, you wanted to say something, right?
Yeah, I'm curious, what region do you see likely leading that?
Okay, so this is the thing. Dubai is and the Middle East is very crypto positive. I think we're going to see a lot of positive regulation there. It's very clear, and it's not a misstatement to kind of say that culturally we do look to America for these big kind of things, right? The S&P 500 is obviously in America. Like, a lot of the financial action happens in America, and it does kind of set a standard for us globally. Whether we all agree, disagree, I think that there is something to be said for America standing there. Personally, this is where I'm unsure of the regulation in America, because I think what that does is going to set a precedent for the rest of the world and kind of be an example for the rest of the world. I personally am thinking the regulation isn't going to be overly positive. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think the whole FTX debacle kind of, like, sentiment is bad. Like, again, it just cements the idea that this shit is all a scam. And so I think that's why I say I'm not sure, but what the regulation is going to be. I think in Europe, in Africa, I personally don't see the major Web2 games launching a game. And again, I was leaning more towards major IPs. But what I think we will see is that a lot of I won't say a lot, I'll say a couple of Web2 studios are going to announce interest in blockchain integration in 2023. So I think these major announcements are going to come in. I mean, we've seen things like Square Enix already. They're the guys that do Final Fantasy. They've already kind of said that blockchain is going to be a thing that they're going to move towards. So I'm kind of cheating with this prediction because it's somewhat already happening. I just see a lot of others. I think like Activision, and I'm not saying this, but I mean, like, like large scale major studios like that are going to start making those announcements. I don't think it's going to be the majority. I think it's still going to be a minority, but I think we're going to start to see a bit of a transition, or at least I'm hoping, based on this prediction. Do you guys have anything to add on that one?
We agree.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty safe
I
one.
think that's reasonable. Yep.
It's a pretty safe one, yeah. Honestly, this is somewhat aligning again with you, Annie, going from the 10x of 0.3% of the market, the crypto market, to 3%. My next prediction is actually that GameFi will continue to take the lead in Web3 adoption in Web3 in 2023. So I think the time of DeFi bringing people into Web3 is somewhat kind of, I won't say over, but I think, again, GameFi is going to be the thing that brings people in. We saw that with Axie previously, and I think that's going to be a trend that continues. And I can't see any kind of other use case that's going to bring everyone and say, all right, let's forget about the games. This is the real reason that we want to use Web3. I think GameFi is still going to be that number one spot that's going to keep bringing people into Web3. We will need other things, but for mass adoption. But I think in 2023, GameFi is going to be the thing that kind of brings people in, but it's not going to be enough. Like you say, like we have many other use cases in our life. We don't spend 24 hours of our day playing games. And the final one, a bit of a light one to end off with. I think that we are going to see at least one meme coin that gets pumped to the level that we had Shiba Inu, Dogecoin, some cultural movement like that that's going to get picked up by the mainstream media. And whether that leads us to a little bit of a crypto pump, I don't know. Whether that leads us to the masses kind of saying, "Oh, look, it's a scam. There's another kind of bullshit thing going on." I don't know, but I can imagine we're gonna have one kind of pickle Rick. I don't know, fucking Groku, Smoku coin. I don't know what's gonna happen. But I can imagine one coin is gonna, like, the meme coin has no use case. It's gonna pump for no reason, gaining mainstream media attention. Those are my predictions. There, we'll definitely come back a year from now. I think
Very nice.
December or January of next year would be really cool to come back and actually address these exact predictions. I think that'll be a fun video to do. But anyway, yo, guys, thank you guys for taking the time to obviously be here. I'm really excited for this podcast moving forward. Gaming on the Block. Mona, again, we are so happy to have you kind of join us with this. And Groku, we can't Grogu. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yes,
yeah,
he's happy to be here. Thank you for
I'm
having us.
glad we have a fourth co-host, Annie, always. And like something that I need to mention, guys, like we mentioned at the start, a massive shout out to our sponsor, the ETH Lizards. We're really looking forward to this partnership and seeing all that it brings for everyone involved. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys. Anything to close out with?
Just reiterate that it's really exciting to be back with you guys today, to have a chance to really kick off 2023 in a very exciting way, speaking about Web3 gaming. Again, a big thank you also to ETH Lizards for the sponsorship here. Great community for those that are not aware. Essentially, it's a Web3 gaming investment DAO. So if you want, come join us in the Discord, the Lizard Underground, check it out. Really, we want to just continue pushing forward in the boundaries of Web3 gaming, because as you said, TSG, I think whether this is the leading sector or just one of the leading in Web3 over the next few years, we're absolutely going to be onboarding many people to Web3, improving the decentralization ethos and overall asset ownership virtually. So super excited to be here building with you guys. Grogu, you as well. And Mona, thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to the next episodes.
Awesome. Mona, any kind of last words before we wrap this up?
No, I'm so excited. This is to me, this is a dream team. I mean, you guys brought some really awesome perspective to the table. Annie, as always, has to overachieve, and I am going to come back with bringing the force again with a whole presentation next week. So see you then.
Amazing. Now, all good. Like I said, guys, appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, the ETH Lizards channel. A lot more content to be coming out here. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.